$373 million. That is what Ukraine just agreed to pay the United States for a weapon that costs America $21,000 to make. $373 million. Before you dismiss that as a contradiction, understand what that number actually buys. Over 1,500 precision guidance kits, fuse systems, software, training, full technical support. A package so complete that a Ukrainian pilot can strap one of these kits onto a dumb bomb that would otherwise miss its target by hundreds of feet, and instead put 500 pounds of high explosive through the roof of a specific building in a city from 40 miles away, without flying anywhere near the target, and without Russia being able to do anything about it. That is what the United States just approved for Ukraine. And that is why the Russian spring offensive is in serious trouble. In this video, we will look at exactly what Ukraine is buying with those $373 million. Why the cost-exchange ratio of this weapon is perhaps the most devastating thing about it. How Ukraine built a middle-range strike campaign that has already quadrupled in scale since February. And why the arrival of more Joint Direct Attack Munitions, Extended Range, or JDAM-ERs, into Ukraine means that Russia's rear lines are about to become an extremely dangerous place to be. But first, let us look at what Russia is actually facing in its own backyard. Russia thought it had figured out Ukraine's limitations. It had studied the front lines, assessed Ukraine's air force, watched the drones, tracked the artillery, and Russia concluded that the deep rear, command posts, logistics hubs, fuel depots, ammunition storage, was safe, too far back, too well defended, too expensive for Ukraine to target consistently. Russia built an entire operational concept on that assumption. It massed its support infrastructure in the occupied territories. It organized its spring offensive around a rear that it believed was untouchable. That assumption is now destroying it. Ukraine launched what military analysts call a middle-range campaign in 2026. Middle range is defined as everything happening between 12.5 and 93 miles from the front line. This is the zone where Russia parks its command and control, its logistics, its reserves, its repair facilities, its ammunition chains. Ukraine looked at that zone and decided to attack it systematically, continuously, and at scale. The results were immediate. From February to March, middle-range strikes doubled. From February to April, they quadrupled. Ukraine's own president called this a priority area and promised more, much more. Russia is watching its operational depth get eaten alive. The front lines weaken, the offensives stall, the supply chains fracture, and the weapon that makes this possible at scale costs Ukraine $244,000 per unit. Think about what that means for Russia. An air defense system costs between $5 million and $500 million depending on its class. A command post facility costs tens of millions to construct, equip, and staff. A logistics hub represents billions in cumulative investment. When a JDAM-ER destroys one of those targets, Ukraine spends $244,000. Russia loses orders of magnitude more. This is not warfare. This is financial demolition. Until now, Russia had reason to believe that Ukraine simply could not sustain this tempo. Ukraine's economy is under immense strain. Its gross domestic product shrank by 0.5 percentage points in the first quarter of 2026. The country faces a budget shortfall of $45 billion for the year. Every weapon Ukraine fires has to be weighed against what it costs, and whether that cost is bearable. Russia banked on those constraints, choking Ukraine's campaign before it could really bite. Then the United States approved the sale of over 1,500 more JDAM-ER kits, and Russia's calculation collapsed. Here is where it gets serious. The Joint Direct Attack Munition is not a new weapon. The concept was born out of frustration. During Operation Desert Storm in 1991, American pilots were deploying the Paveway 2 laser-guided bomb across Iraq. And the Paveway 2 was not a bad weapon. For Vietnam-era technology, it was revolutionary. But in Iraq, Sandstorms scrambled the laser guidance. Smoke from burning oil fields disrupted targeting. Bombs were missing. Pilots were taking risks that the technology was supposed to eliminate. The United States Air Force recognized it had a problem. Laser guidance was too fragile for real-world combat conditions. Pilots needed something that worked in all weather, at all times, without depending on a clean line of sight to the target. The answer was already orbiting the Earth. GPS satellites made lasers obsolete overnight. The guidance system moved from a fragile beam of light to a network of satellites that sandstorms cannot disrupt, smoke cannot block, and bad weather cannot degrade. Engineers stripped the nose cone off the paveway concept, replaced the laser seeker with a GPS receiver, and added a tailfin assembly that could steer a falling bomb onto exact coordinates. They tested the first prototype by dropping 450 of them. The system was accurate to within 33 feet. System dependability landed at 95%. The JDAM was born. But the original JDAM still had a range problem. A pilot had to get relatively close to a target before releasing the weapon. In contested airspace, close means exposed. The extended range variant solved this with a wing kit. Open the wings, and a JDAM-ER can glide up to 40 nautical miles from its release point. That is the difference between a pilot needing to be over a target and a pilot launching from an entirely different patch of sky. The aircraft never enters the danger zone. The bomb finds the target anyway. And the system is hardened against Russia's preferred countermeasures. Russia has invested heavily in electronic warfare. Jamming GPS signals is a core part of its anti-drone and anti-precision weapon strategy. For many weapons, this works. Scramble the signal, and the weapon loses its guidance. But JDAM-ERs pair GPS with an inertial navigation system. That system uses motion and rotation sensors to independently calculate the weapon's position, speed, and orientation. If the GPS signal drops, the inertial system takes over. The weapon keeps flying toward the target. Russia jams the sky, and the bomb ignores it. So why does this matter so much right now, in the spring of 2026? Because Ukraine has already proven, beyond any reasonable doubt, that these weapons work exactly as intended against Russian targets. This is not a theoretical capability. It is a track record. Ukraine has used JDAMs to destroy over 180 important targets since they first arrived in 2023. That number comes directly from Ukraine's general staff. In March 2024, JDAMs obliterated Russian rocket and artillery depots in the Kherson Oblast. The same strike took out a Russian command post, with a JDAM-ER launched from a MiG-29 doing the work. In February 2025, Ukraine became the first nation in history to deploy the 1,000-pound variant of the JDAM-ER in live combat, carried by a Soviet-era Su-27. And just months later, another Su-27 put a JDAM-ER through a specific building in a densely populated urban area in the Donetsk region, taking out a Russian battalion command post with surgical precision. Read that last sentence again. A specific building, in a city, from a standoff distance, with no pilot anywhere near the target. This is the capability that Russia has been unable to answer. Here is what that actually costs Russia. Middle-range strikes have quadrupled. 4 times as many command posts going dark. 4 times as many logistics chains interrupted. 4 times as many communication hubs shattered. Every one of those strikes chips away at Russia's ability to coordinate, resupply, and reinforce its frontline units. The offensive that Putin built for the spring runs on logistics. Those logistics are being burned in real time. But stay with us, because it gets even more significant when you understand what Ukraine is doing with its Air Force. JDAM-ERs are not a single aircraft weapon. They are a universal upgrade. Ukraine has F-16 fighters, the first of which arrived in 2024. 87 of them have been pledged by European partners. Only 4 have been lost. Those F-16s are JDAM compatible from the factory. The pilots who trained on F-16s trained on JDAMs simultaneously. The integration is seamless. Ukraine also operates 6 Mirage 2005 jets supplied by France, with potentially 20 more on the way. Those too are JDAM compatible. And then there are the Soviet platforms, the MiG-29s and Su-27s, aircraft that were never designed to carry Western munitions, but that Ukrainian engineers have modified through what can only be described as remarkable improvisation. There is video, dated July 2025, of Ukrainian MiG-29s carrying JDAM-ERs over the Zaporizhzhia region. Those bombs later struck a Russian military crossing behind the front lines. Ukraine has not just bought a weapon, it has integrated a precision strike system across its entire air force, from cutting-edge Western jets to Soviet-era platforms that no one expected to carry GPS-guided munitions. Think about what that means to Russia's planners. Russia cannot predict which aircraft type is carrying a JDAM. It cannot predict the launch azimuth. It cannot predict the release altitude or the standoff range. The pilot is 40 miles from the target when the weapon leaves the aircraft. The aircraft is gone before the bomb arrives, and the bomb is already inside 33 feet of accuracy by the time Russian radar even understands what is happening. This is the asymmetry that 1,500 new JDAM-ER kits will inject into Ukraine's middle-range campaign. Let us put the numbers into perspective. Ukraine is spending $373 million. For that, it receives over 1,500 precision strike kits. Every Russian air defense system these destroy costs Russia between $5 million and, in the case of advanced systems like the S-400, $500 million per battery. One JDAM-ER destroys a target worth 10, 20, 50, 100 times its own cost. If Ukraine picks its targets carefully, which it has already demonstrated it can, $373 million could erase billions of dollars of Russian military investment. The adversary cannot win a war of attrition at those exchange rates. The economics of this campaign are not in Russia's favor. And here's the final dimension of why this matters beyond Ukraine's borders. Russia's spring offensive was built around a belief. The belief that Ukraine's precision strike capability was limited in scope and unsustainable in tempo. That Ukraine's financial constraints would force it to ration every weapon. That the middle-range zone, the critical operational depth where Russia stages its war, was fundamentally secure. Every tactical plan, every logistics arrangement, every command structure Russia built for this offensive assumed that rear area security was guaranteed. The United States just invalidated that assumption with a single arms sale. Over 1,500 more JDAM-ER kits mean that Ukraine does not have to choose between striking the front and striking the rear. It can do both. It can keep pressure on the front lines while systematically dismantling the infrastructure that makes Russian operations possible. The layered campaign that Ukraine has built, mid-range drones for the further targets, JDAM-ERs for the nearer and harder targets, becomes deeper, denser, and more lethal with every new kit that enters the country. Russia planned for a version of Ukraine that was struggling to survive. It is, instead, facing a country that has become one of the most operationally innovative forces in the world, armed with precision weapons from the most advanced military-industrial complex on Earth, running a campaign that has quadrupled in intensity in less than 3 months. Putin built his spring offensive for a version of the battlefield that no longer exists. If you found value in this, subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next.